Hello and welcome to another segment of Interviews That Matter. I'm your host Raj Mehta. Friends, in this segment we bring those guests who influence our lives. This includes elected officials, policymakers, heads of major organizations and other dignitaries. It is my sincere hope that the knowledge brought in by these guests will help our community. Today we have such guest who is an ex-assemblyman and now an entrepreneur, Marc Alessi. Let's meet Marc. Marc, thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Marc, you won a special election as an assemblyman, right? In September 13th, that's the day I came into this country, so it's a lucky day.
Oh, is that right?
Basically.
Okay.
Yes, I came into this country on September 13, 1978. 1978, yes. And you were just born at that time.
76. Yeah, I was 2 years old.
2 years old, right? So that time I came into this country,
Okay.
when you were 2 years old. So you won the special election, and then after that you were three terms altogether. Three terms altogether, assemblyman for the state of New York.
Yes.
Right. And before that you were working for Carl McCall, I believe.
I was in the state comptroller's office.
State Comptroller's office.
So it was September 13, 2005 that I won the special election.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I was working at the comptroller's office.
Mm-hmm.
I was his Long Island director originally.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was going to law school at night. And when I was getting ready to graduate law school and figure out what's next.
Right.
But we were doing some amazing things. We were exposing corruption in local school districts and reforming the way LIPA operated, exposing some issues that were there at LIPA. We were the first ones in there. I know now there's a lot of criticisms of LIPA, but I think we were the original critics pointing out the problems, and I carried that into when I was in the state assembly as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were doing some great work, and I had passed up the opportunity to run for office a few times, county legislature and town council that year. And the reason was we had just bought our first house, my wife and I. We had our first baby, and unfortunately at 31 she was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Oh boy.
So we didn't really want a political career.
Right, right.
And I went to Albany to represent the comptroller at the Italian American Legislators Festa. For some reason they sent me, Marc Alessi, every year.
Okay.
And some of the people that I knew in Albany were giving me a hard time for passing up the opportunity to run for office. And my predecessor in the state assembly was walking by. Her name was Patricia Akampura.
Right.
And I pointed to her and I said, when she resigns or retires, I'll run for state assembly.
Okay.
And they said, she's not going anywhere, and you can never win that district. It was a 2-to-1 Republican district.
Exactly.
I was a Democrat.
Right.
And she resigned the following week to go to the Public Service Commission. And so I called my wife at home as I'm on the train into the city, and I'm reading the paper, and I'm just laughing about it, how ironic. And she's completely silent. And I asked, well, I'm obviously not going to do it. She's going through chemo treatments. It definitely was not a smart time to run for office.
Right, right.
And she said, you have to do it. She's like, I'm going to be fine. You're supposed to do this. I don't know why, but you're supposed to do this. So get out there, help women that are going through what I'm going through and don't have health insurance. Because we were seeing the bills, although our insurance company was covering it, you still see the amounts.
Wow.
And we couldn't fathom what it would be like to end chemo treatments and having gone through that, but watching yourself build up yet another mortgage, basically.
Wow.
So we made this impossible run, 2-to-1 Republican district. Nobody expected me to win. It was on September 13th, which is not an election day.
Right.
It was a primary day.
Right.
And only Republican primaries were happening that day in that district.
Oh, wow.
So only Republicans were turning out.
Yeah.
So nobody gave me a prayer to win this thing.
Huh.
And we ran this Picture Perfect campaign, and everybody that we've met through the years came out, in big support of both her and I, my wife and I, and we won. And long story short, in terms of the assembly, because of the way we won, I never was all that partisan. I didn't look at things as Democrat, Republican. I didn't look at it from a political bent. I said, my time in this seat is going to be limited. I just want to do what I think is right, so that when it's over, I can put my head on the pillow. No, I did a good job. And I had 3 great terms doing that.
Well, you do have that reputation, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
You are a very hard worker, you do a right job, and you do a good job.
Thank you.
Whatever you do.
Thanks.
So I just want to let you know that I hear from a lot of other people.
That's good to know.
Yep. So we definitely. I'm happy to be your friend, rather.
Likewise. Thanks.
So, right. So like 2.5 term almost assembly.
Yeah, that's right. So
almost
the first term was a half a term because I was
Right,
filling out a
right,
term.
right.
And then I won 2 re-elections, one in 2006, one in 2008. And I got very interested. It was funny. May of 2010, I was thinking of not running again for the November 2010 race. And the reason being, I was 34 years old. I was sitting in this. I'm going to give you a little perspective into the assembly and what the life of an assemblyman is like.
Right.
Sitting in a dingy hotel room at night, not seeing my family for weeks because we were working on the state budget.
Right.
The budget was late, even though we voted for it in the state assembly. So I hadn't gotten paid in months. I was watching my bank accounts dwindle to nothing. And when it was a very difficult year. The Senate was just a mess that year with infighting and coups and who's in charge. That's why the state budget was so late. And so when I came home, it wasn't that people were very respectful of the kind of work that was coming out of Albany. So I'm thinking to myself, why am I doing this? I'm in my 30s. This is the time to build companies.
Right.
I was very interested in technology transfer, finding patents in labs and building companies around that. And so as an assemblyman, I was holding hearings and trying to incentivize investments in new startup companies in New York State and on Long Island to create jobs. And that passion continued to grow. I've always been an entrepreneur. I started painting companies when I was younger, and hired 20 people at the age of 19. I was employing many people. So with that experience, I knew I was an entrepreneur, and I was starting to second guess whether it made sense to be in the state assembly. The people made the choice for me. I lost in November 2010. It was a Tea Party tsunami, and I was in a 2-to-1 Republican district, and I was a Democrat.
Right.
I lost by a half a percentage point, which means that many Republicans and people from all persuasions still voted for me, but it was just an insurmountable wave. But we saw it as an opportunity. I got to get more involved in the innovation economy from the private sector side. And that's the life I've built for myself.
There was only like 150 votes almost, right?
It ended up
really
being
small.
around 700 out of about almost 50,000 votes. So it's a razor thin margin. As a matter of fact, my successor has since left the state assembly, and as of right now, there's going to be a special election for the seat.
Oh, is that right?
And my phone was ringing
All the
quite
time,
often.
right?
To make that run, and I do miss public service. So I painted that picture of some of my frustrations.
Right.
Having been out of it, there's a number of things that I miss. I miss being able to wake up every day knowing that day I was going to be helping people, whether it's a large policy that I was going to be fighting for, a small local community issue, or an individual constituent who was having a really hard time and I could help. That was amazing, and I missed that, and I'd like to get back to that one day. But even though that opportunity exists now, what I'm doing right now in the private sector and my family obligations, this is my job now, and that's what I'm concentrating on.
I think you have to balance your life, basically. You have to see that what stage you are in and what is more important for you, and that's how you do it, basically.
That's right.
Right. So obviously this is more important right now, as of now.
That's right.
Future, you never know.
I could help in the community in more quiet ways.
And you still can help,
That's right.
It's like that, without being in assembly, you still can help.
That's right.
Right. So, so tell me the secret, it's a 2-to-1 Republican majority, right? First time you won. What is the secret? It's not easy to win. What did you do different?
In 2005,
Right.
and I've done it in other races for other people.
Okay.
The voters, for the most part, although sometimes they can be tricked, for the most part, the voters are very astute, and they are not really concerned with party labels anymore.
Okay.
Things are changing. People are usually more concerned with how local issues are impacting them. So when I did a lot of walking door to door and meeting people personally.
Okay.
And in doing that, when somebody would open the door and ask, well, what party are you in? The answer is, does it matter? Because these are the issues that are affecting us as a community.
Right.
This is my stance on it. support me, don't support a party.
Right.
And I think that was a an important message, and that's something that I respond to too. I don't like when partisanship gets in the way of progress, and I think for the most part, most voters feel the same way.
I agree with you. I mean, as a person, they like you, then they don't care really
That's right.
what party you are in, and you work very hard, went to door, and that's I think that is key probably.
Oh,
right?
without a doubt, that's very important in all elections.
Right.
Actually, wearing out your shoes and walking the streets and the personal contact with voters is very important.
You must have lost a lot of weight then.
I did. That's the one thing. I missed that weight control method of walking door to door. At least one, every year it was, I probably did lose about 15, 20 pounds every election.
There you go, see. So, while in assembly, right, we want to know something which normally people don't know. So
Okay.
tell us something which, all we know is, okay, what assembly does and each member, this and
Sure.
that, committees and all that we know.
So, one big misperception about the assembly and about Albany. So you hear about, the moniker of 3 men in a room, and that it's bad government, and and then specifically in the assembly, how the speaker is basically a dictator in the assembly. And so what most people realize is that's not true. The speaker is a very strong leader of the state assembly, but in the assembly, that's a 2-to-1 Democratic majority statewide.
Right.
There's about 105 Democrats and 45 Republicans.
Right.
So it's an overwhelming majority.
Right.
And a very diverse majority, both ethnically, racially, socially, economically, geographically. You have, people that are representing rural areas, people that are representing cities, upstate, downstate, and trying to get all of those people on the same page on issues is a big job. That being said, when big issues came up, we had conferences, the Democratic conference, the Republican conference. We could barely fit into the room with 105 people. But every issue was debated ad nauseum to get everybody's perspective.
Okay.
And basically, from the consensus of the group, the speaker would take that consensus and then go negotiate, for example, on the budget with the governor and the majority leader of the Senate. And why it's important to do that way, think of some of the local town councils or even a condo board. Getting 7 people to agree on a budget
not easy.
is hard.
It's
try
really
105, try 150, try 2 different houses. You need to basically funnel all of those issues and passion and be represented. So the speaker would go and negotiate with the other 2 leaders.
Okay.
And then come back and report what happened.
Okay.
And then get more direction from the group. People do not see that. They don't realize it. The media doesn't report on it. And so, but at the end of the day, I think that people should feel a little bit better that it's their assembly person is not going to Albany and taking orders, but they're giving them. Problem is, they're giving orders with a lot of other people, and sometimes you have to compromise, and that can be frustrating when you have very local perspectives and issues.
Right, yeah.
That you want carried. Well, Long Island issues have to also meld with Buffalo issues.
Right, exactly.
And that could be frustrating.
Yeah, which are 2 totally different things.
Right.
Yeah. So in other words, the assembly speaker is not a bully, or it's not like, I'm sure there is a lot of negotiation goes on everywhere. Individually and group-wise, right?
Sure, I'm sure that there are times where he has to go to individual members and really, try to persuade them to see things his way. But for the most part, it is a very collegial body, and it's very democratic. And in politics, when you get back to your district, I've seen it too many times, and maybe this is one of the reasons I lost by a 0.5 percentage point, because I stopped doing it. But it's easier to go back and just beat up on government. And everybody up there is awful, except for your assemblyman. The assembly is awful, but I'm not, and I'm fighting the fight. Try to explain the intricacy of the body and how it is functioning.
Right.
When you're explaining, you're losing. So it's just easier. But the problem is when you have two candidates degrading the process and how complicated it is and trying to make it very simple and that it's broken, well, that's what the people believe. And then they lose confidence in their government and process and they stop participating. That's problematic. We have awful participation in our elections, and the problem there is, when you have only 20 to 30% of the people making the decision of who's in the office,
right,
and people feel like government's separate from them. That's the government. We're the government.
Right.
Every single voter is the government.
Is the government, right? Exactly.
And
that's right.
I've seen very average people get a lot of extraordinary things done when they realize that.
So, I mean, in assembly, the process is that, that's only a budget. So what do you think about this governor's performance?
I think he's doing a remarkable job. I did not have the opportunity to work with him as an assembly person,
right?
But he's showing very strong leadership. And I agree with 99% of everything that he's doing.
Wow. Okay.
Maybe 98, but that's a very good track record.
Pretty, right. Yeah.
And it's something that New York needed. He is right-sizing our budget. He's not spending it outside of our means. He got the tax rates for personal taxes, for personal income, lower than it's been since 1960.
Wow.
So that's a remarkable record right there. But I think he's doing a lot of great things, and it was sorely needed.
So I mean, again, previous governors were also smart people, right? They were not. Nobody was dumb, obviously.
Right.
And this governor could do certain things. And do you see a reason why he could do it versus Spitzer and versus Pataki and a lot of they were like smart people also, but they couldn't do this.
Respect.
Again,
people had this impression that Albany was broken. That the people that were there,
right?
Legislators. I came in as a reformer, but when you had a Spitzer or a Patterson, who were very good. Patterson was a great legislator. Spitzer was a great attorney general, but the respect level for the people that they needed to work with to pass legislation, to get things done, was just not there. And as a result of that, I think that negotiations didn't go as far as they could have.
Wow.
I think that, again, they expected the speaker to leave a meeting and tell us what to do instead of working with a body in a deliberative way and in a respectful way. And I think Governor Cuomo, having worked within his father's administration, knowing how Albany does operate, there was definitely problems. There definitely is problems in Albany. We're seeing it with people that, lawmakers who are basically lawbreakers.
Right.
That's a problem.
Right.
But that being said, there's a lot of great people there that are working very hard, and I think he knows how to reach out to them and get them to, move legislation forward and come to terms on compromise.
I have had other assemblymen here interviewed before, right? And I asked him the same question, and his thing was that governor had a carrot and stick kind of thing, stick in his hand,
right,
about redistricting.
Okay.
So therefore, he was able to convince people and bring everybody into one thing, and that's how the budget got passed.
That
and everything.
is
Is that like something?
That I would say that there's a lot of truth to that. So
there's a lot of truth to that.
I think it's more specific to. I was saying that the governor knows how Albany operates
exactly
and how to get things done.
That's it.
And that is probably one tool in his tool chest.
Yep.
That the legislature in turn had to give him a certain level of respect.
Right.
But the people that he surrounded himself with have run the state before. A lot of them, a lot of the folks had been involved with the original Cuomo administration. So there wasn't any on-the-job training. They came in. We were in crisis mode. He became governor as revenues were dwindling, and they were able to really pick it up. And I think New York State is really in good shape. And there's a lot to be said for that. I read a report recently how New York State ranks the worst in the business climate because of taxes.
Right.
They're like 48th or 49th. And in the same report, this was not a report that was against New York State. They said the people that are putting that out had Wyoming as like the top state. But if you look at the GDP of these states and the economic activity and the business startups, New York is a whole lot higher than a Wyoming. If you just look at one thing, and you don't take into account the fact that that tax money is going towards stellar education, a very educated workforce, infrastructure that we need, those investments are necessary to have real economic activity.
Right.
And if you start looking at things like output, GDP, average income, then New York State is a fantastic place to do business. And there's more startups, there's more investment in companies in New York than anywhere else except the Silicon Valley. There's something to be said for that.
Wow. And I mean, I agree with you that governor is doing a fantastic job. He's taking on a lot of things which normally nobody would do that.
Right.
Pension reforms and, the tax cap and everything is something which is, and teachers evaluation also, something that is necessary really, So I agree with you. And, compared to like Wyoming or other states, like what money you make over there versus what money we make over here, we're still ahead.
Well, that's another thing. Are you looking at total tax dollars? Well, because it's more expensive to live here.
Right.
It's the financial center of the world.
Exactly.
It's going to be more expensive to live here, but you earn more money.
You earn more money, right, exactly.
But there are definitely some strains as a result of that. When you retire and you want to stretch out your fixed income, it's a hard place to stay.
Right.
So, that as a result of, because it's a unique place.
Right.
But Long Island, for example, is a more expensive place to live, and we have more parks per capita than most other places to live. It's a wonderful place to live.
Right.
I grew up working class out here, but I got to go to some of the best beaches in the world. I never felt working class. I felt very wealthy growing up.
Mark, we'll take a short break and we'll be right back.
Thank you.
Please stay with us. Welcome back to Interviews That Matter. I'm your host Raj Mehta. We are having a conversation with a former assemblyman and now an entrepreneur, Marc Alessi. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you.
So we have already talked about your days in assembly and you as a politician. Now let's talk about you as an entrepreneur.
Okay.
Okay. I wanted to. I mean, you have a new startup which you took an invention from the Brookhave National Lab, a patent, right?
3 patents, yes.
3 patents, and now you have started a company called Synchropat.
Yes.
Can you tell us? Can you describe what is the product and how does it fit in?
So what Brookhaven Lab has been able to do is build a new, come up with a new way to build PET scan devices. So a PET scanner has nothing to do with dogs and cats at home. So I just have to do that as a qualification.
Okay.
It is a medical imaging device used for humans for diagnostics for things like cancer or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, and in small animal research for drug development. And what a radio tracer is placed in the body that breaks down and emits positrons. And the PET detector picks that up and gives you an image. It's a functional imaging device. So it tells you what the cells are doing while they're doing it, as opposed to like an MRI, which is an anatomical device. It takes a picture of what's in your body.
Right.
So a PET scanner is great at finding cancer because even before there's a tumor, it could tell you if the cells are processing glucose as if they are cancer. So it finds it really early. So PET is an expanding imaging modality. So what BNL has been able to do is come up with a new way to build PET scanners so that we can miniaturize them. And that's important for a number of reasons, and I'll detail that. But we can also go into an MRI field, which is usually, that's not typical of PET scanners. Usually MRI and PET have to be in separate rooms. They're not compatible. They affect each other's images. We can go into an MRI device with our PET scanners and get a dual image. So now you can have an anatomical image and a functional image at the same time. You can see if there's basically a lesion that looks like a tumor, and then you can see if it's lighting up on a PET scanner at the same time and acting like cancer. That's a much more important evaluation. And that's just one example of what PET can do and what PET with MRI can do. But the miniaturization, we're able to build the smallest PET scanners in the world. So the smallest PET scanner for like a small animal for research is the size of a refrigerator today. Our PET scanner can fit into your coat pocket.
Wow.
And why that's important is we can put it on the head of a rat than when we're doing neuronal imaging and coming up with, for example, a new drug for Alzheimer's.
Okay.
Today on the market, the rat has to go into that small refrigerator and be anesthetized. The anesthesia has a confounding effect. By putting this small PET scanner on the rat's head and keeping it awake and letting it move about its cage, we get rid of the effects of the anesthesia, which is a problem with research. And now you can watch behavior while the animal moves about its cage and the brain is imaged. We can also take that same PET scanner and retrofit it into an existing MRI device and get a dual image. So for cancer research and cancer drug development, that's important. And then for humans, we build these very small PET scanners for the wrist. And when you wrap the human wrist with a PET scanner, what we're doing is while you're getting a traditional PET scan, we monitor the input function of the radio tracer. So today, when somebody's going for cancer treatment and they're getting PET scans, for example, to make that PET scan more useful for tumor mapping, for example, knowing the bioavailability of the radio tracer in the blood at the time of the image would be helpful. The only way to do that today is an arterial catheter, which is very painful, problematic. Nobody's doing that. So the standard today in the clinic is to estimate what's in the blood. They take a look at, this is a male, he's 60 years old, he's 190 pounds. We put this much radio tracer in before the image. This is how much he probably metabolized. This is probably what's in the blood. And what that means is you have to do a series of scans over a period of time to get an average. Today, with our detectors, with the wrist PET, we can give you a non-invasive arterial analysis of radio tracer. So now, instead of taking weeks to determine if your chemo treatment's working, we can do it in days. So that's the wrist PET. And then we could retrofit human MRI devices for, like, for example, breast imaging. We have breast images that go onto the table in existing MRI devices to eliminate the false positives associated with breast MRI. And we're developing a full body PET system for full body PET MRI. Full body PET MRI, the only other company that could do that today is Siemens. Every other imaging company would like to do full body PET MRI. We have the capability of doing that. So we're out there and we're looking to partner up with other companies and make sure that we get all these devices to market.
So is this something good for the research institution, or is it good for it?
It's both. So we have the 3 small animal devices are definitely just research. And the beauty of that is we're leading with those devices because we don't have to go to the FDA for approval when you're doing studies on rats, for example. And therefore, we can start selling devices next year instead of waiting for the FDA process to play out. So those devices are for research. The wrist detector will have some research applications because of the fact that it makes full body PET more useful. Full body PET on humans is also used in research for new radio tracer development for PET, but chemo development, new drug development for neuronal disease and cancers. So that will be used in research labs as well, but for the most part, the wrist PET, the breast PET MRI, the full body PET, that'll be in the clinic. Helping the Memorial Sloan Ketterings of the world and major research institutions diagnose cancer more accurately, treat cancer a whole lot more efficiently. And so it has applications across the board.
So is it like a preventive, you can use also a preventive measure, right? For example, you said that it detects, the cells.
The only way that I would see these PET scanners used for preventative purposes is when somebody's going in for an MRI of, for example, for breast imaging. So today, the MRI is the best detection method for breast cancer. It finds things at the earliest possible levels. But there's 40 to 80% false positives. So there's a lot of unnecessary biopsies, things that look like cancer on an MRI that are not. So insurance companies will not reimburse that as a mode of first defense against cancer. But the industry would like to get there. This would be the gold standard. Right now it's just been mammography, and there's a problem with doing mammographies over a long period of time. It's a lot of radiation, and it doesn't find things as early as MRI. So for screening purposes, if we could eliminate the false positives, we retrofit those breast scanners, the breast PET scanners, into the table that goes into an MRI device. The MRI would be the first modality. There's no radiation with an MRI. If you see something suspicious, you could run a simultaneous PET scan. and eliminate the false positives. If it's lighting up on the PET scan and it's showing up on the MRI,
Right.
you need to do a biopsy then.
Okay.
So that's where I would see it as the earliest detection piece, but I think it would be, these PET scan devices would be used for drug development, and it would be used for helping diagnose people for Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, but helping make PET and MRI just more useful in treating people that we already know have had cancer.
Okay, got you. So where are you in the business plan now?
So right now we're getting ready to site our first betas. We have 5 prototypes for each of these devices I listed. They all work.
Okay.
We are re-engineering the software with the first device.
Okay.
That software is pretty much similar to the software in all the other devices. So once the first device is engineered and we're ready to beta site it, which will be within the next 6 months, we'll have our first betas out. We will freeze that beta over a 6 to 9 month period after interaction with our first customers. And then we'll have a commercial product by the end of 2014. Around August or September, we'll be making our first commercial sales. And along that timeline, we will bring the other devices to market as well. So we're just at the point where we're hiring our first employees, and we're working pretty much directly with Brookhave National Laboratory right now. We'll be establishing our headquarters here on Long Island.
Okay.
So we're in the startup phase. We've been raising capital here on Long Island with the Long Island Angel Network and Accelerate Long Island, and we have a handful of angel investors, but we'll have to raise a good deal of private money between now and the end of 2014. And then by that time, we'll reach break even with our devices, and we'll be another employer on Long Island. And as a policymaker, this is what I pontificated. As an entrepreneur, this is what I'm executing.
Good, very good. But I mean, if someone wants to invest, how do they go about it?
Well, they could contact us they could look up our website, synchropet.com, synchropet.com, and then we'll make sure that they go through the appropriate channels to look into investing in Synchropet. They would, for the most part, we're looking for accredited investors that raise to the angel status. But it's an exciting opportunity.
What is the amount? I mean, what is the minimum
Well, we're
amount,
raising
maximum amount?
we're raising $3 million total for Synchropet over the next 2 years.
So that's the first phase.
No, that's pretty much our total raise.
Oh, that's the total raise.
That's our total raise.
Before,
We're raising,
that's when you start making money.
We start making money after we've raised $3 million. After the sale of our first 10 devices, we would be at our break-even point. So the way it works is we're raising $500,000 to get our betas out into the field.
Okay.
Once they're sited, our burn rate increases because we increase our staff.
Right.
We'll raise another $1.5 million.
Okay.
That'll get us to commercial product.
Okay.
And then the final $1 million is to get us to the break-even point. It's working capital. And we're looking at everything, EB5 program, which is something that was recently introduced to me, where foreign investors can invest in startups in the United States as long as the startup can create 10 jobs within the first 2 years. And we fit that model. So we're looking at potentially trying to attract EB5 investors and accredited investors, private equity, venture capitalists, and we're just in the beginning of the capital raise. So it's been good.
Is it going to be a debt or equity?
That
I'm asking you
depends
a
on
little question, because our viewers are, pretty interested in this
Oh,
field
okay.
rather, because they are like, a lot of them are doctors and in healthcare. So
our first investors that are sending us term sheets now. So the Long Island Emerging Technology Fund we've been talking to, and other angels, they've been talking about convertible debt where it's debt now, and the value of the company will be set the next time we raise a larger round of capital. But it really depends on the investor, and as we put the plan together, it could either be a convertible note, or it would end up being an angel investment where it's equity and they get a percentage of the company, and we're amenable to all that.
What is the expected rate of return in a business plan?
Well, for angel investors, and I can't get into specifics because I can't make
That's okay.
an offering on a private company.
General idea. I mean,
But
I know.
for angel investors, and in this space, usually investors are not interested unless it's a 10x rate of return.
Okay.
So, I'm proving that this is a $3 to $5 million company, and in 3 to 5 years, it could be a $30 to $50 million company.
Okay.
And that's all written out on paper. So,
Okay.
but I can't, just to put into perspective, unless somebody's an accredited investor, I can't offer them equity in this company in exchange for an investment. There's certain federal regulations and such, so I have to be careful not to make an offering to anybody for investment. But if they go through the angel network and things like that, then they could invest.
Okay. Okay. So best way is to contact. Look at the website first.
Look at the website. My contact information
your
is
contact
on there.
information is on there, and they can always contact me also.
Absolutely.
I mean, I can also
feel free.
Get you. Not a problem. Okay. Now, I want to congratulate you for that. I mean, it's really great because we had Dr. Coppen here, and he described the commercialization of all the invention that has been done in Brookhave National Lab, and you are one of the first one who are kind of utilizing that model.
Yes.
And I've been always talking about that. Listen, we spend a lot of money in researching and development and all that, and somebody else takes the advantage of it.
That's right.
So this is something good that you're doing.
I appreciate that. And you and I used to talk about it at length privately, and when I was in office, and I see an opportunity. New York is the patent capital of the world, and the financial capital of the world, and both of those items were being exported. And marrying them together, when I was a policymaker, it was about job creation, and it still is, but it's also about wealth creation, and it's about getting good products to market.
Exactly.
My devices are going to save lives. They're going to better the human experience. Alzheimer's is a big issue. Parkinson's is a big issue. Cancer is a big issue.
Absolutely.
Personally affected me. I said it earlier in the show. So, I really believe in what we're doing, but aside from what Syncropet is doing, there are so many startups that are just getting started now through programs like Accelerate Long Island. And there is a lot of opportunity out there. So what we're doing is we're building an ecosystem. Syncropet is one of the foundational blocks there. It's one of the first companies out of Accelerate Long Island, but there's going to be a whole lot more, and it's going to be an exciting place to live and do business.
I agree with you because I lost just one of my best friend to a cancer, and it was really shocking, and I mean it's really painful.
One of my frustrations, I lost my father last year. And thanks. What was frustrating to me is I wonder if my wrist pet, the Syncropet's wrist pet, could have helped his oncologist and determine a better course of treatment and saved his life. And while he was, he survived for 13 years when they gave him 2 years to live. So I'm very grateful for the time he had. But while he was in the final stages of his cancer, I knew that potentially these devices, if they were already approved, could help him. And I'll live the rest of my life knowing that. And for that reason alone, I will make sure that this company's a success and that other people have access to this device. Good.
And I want to wish you lots of luck, and I definitely believe in what you're doing.
Thank you.
Definitely. Now let's come back to the political world rather. Okay. This year is an election year for Nassau County Executive.
Okay.
And we'll have a primary between Tom Suozzi and Adam Haber. Tom Suozzi has been 8 years. He was a county executive for 8 years, but Adam Haber is a new guy, right? So what do you think of this primary?
Well, it's interesting.
Who do you like?
Well, I don't know Adam Haber.
Okay.
I haven't met him. I do like Tom Suozzi. I think he's fantastic. I remember when I first met him when he was Glen Cove mayor. I was a young political operative, and I just knew that he had an enormous amount of talent and would do great things. And he did that in Nassau. So with that experience, you look at Tom Suozzi, and I always liked boxing, so I always look at things as from that perspective, a pugilistic perspective sometimes, which maybe not, it's applicable to politics, but maybe it shouldn't be. I'm interested in the Tom Suozzi Mangano matchup and the rematch.
Okay.
But I don't know enough about Haber. I'm not a Nassau resident, so I won't be voting in in the primary or the general.
Right.
And at the same time, I know my Democratic friends, might not appreciate the comment, but I also see that Ed Mangano has been doing a pretty good job. So him and Tom Suozzi, it's going to be a very interesting campaign. I guess maybe I'm saying Tom Suozzi should be the candidate, but if Tom Suozzi runs against Ed Mangano, they both have a really good story to tell, and at least the voters will have a very important decision to make. But two good candidates, and maybe Adam Haber's a very good candidate as well. But the best thing here is there's choices. When you look at some of the races that are run at various levels of government, sometimes there's an incumbent and a challenger that has no prayer and has no message and has no funding. This is going to be like an Ali Frazier. This is going to be a major rematch and very interesting to watch.
Well, Adam Haber was here on the show also.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was on the show, and basically, he's a very energetic person. He's a newcomer. Basically, he's only like on the board of Roslyn School District, and that's as far as he goes in a political world.
Right.
But he does have his own money, number one.
Yes, that's interesting.
And second thing is does have a good ideas, about things, right? What should be done and what is happening and all that. So, if you look at 2001,
yes,
right, when Suozzi was a Glencoe mayor and was running for county executive, the whole party and everybody was backing Tom DiNapoli.
And Tom Suozzi was the outsider.
And Tom Suozzi was outsider and he won.
So you're saying now the tables have turned and he's
This is what
favorite.
People are saying.
That's interesting.
That table could be the same. It could be the same way that Adam Haber might.
But and it could very well be. So I don't want to discourage,
right?
Haber but Tom Suozzi inherited a Nassau County,
right?
That was, in the greatest economic boom was bankrupt,
right?
And he turned it around.
Yes.
He did some remarkable things. I think he also suffered from a Tea Party tsunami.
Right.
And was ousted unfairly. I think he was doing a great job. So, I'm interested in his campaign a great deal in terms of what he has to say now, having been out of it for 4 years,
right,
and having the 8 years of experience of running the county.
Right.
I'm sure that he'll have a lot of criticism of how the county's being run now, and I'm sure that Adam Haber will have a lot of criticism how the county's been run for the last 50 years, because he's got to encapsulate what Tom Suozzi did for his 8 years.
Exactly. Yeah.
I just, now that I say that I'm out of politics,
right,
I basically look at candidates to see how intellectually honest they are, because campaigns could be intellectually dishonest. They could sound like they're criticizing, and rightfully so, but they know full well that they're being rhetorical. And so from that is usually how I make my decisions now.
Yeah, I mean, again, and Mangano is doing a good job too. I mean, he has taken a lot of hard decisions and all that.
It's a difficult climate.
And
I try to be fair to everybody,
right,
and I'm not going to say that he is absolutely awful. I don't know who the next county executive should be, and I think at the end of the day, the people will decide, and it's going to be a very informative campaign, and just, again, hopefully an intellectually honest campaign about the issues that are affecting Nassau. I'm a Long Islander. I'm not a Nassau County resident, but Nassau and Suffolk, there's a symbiotic relationship.
Exactly.
The region depends on good government in both counties and at the town levels. Our economy depends on it.
Right.
So I guess we all have a vested interest in it.
Absolutely. When Kevin Lowe was on our show also, and I asked him the same question, why do we have to have two separate counties? Why can't Long Island be a one county and one government and no duplication of services, everything?
Right.
A lot of savings there, but not possible now.
There's definitely an argument to be made that there's too many governments on Long Island. We have all these towns, villages, and then the two counties. I've heard people argue that merging the two counties and basically just naming it a city, although that is against the Long Island psyche, where Long Island, we're the suburbs, but you'd get a whole lot more federal funding, and you don't have to change, the way we exist as a suburb.
Right.
I don't know if that's a good idea or not. We are an island of 3 million people. there is a certain level of administration that you're going to need to provide services
Right.
to those people. So having 2 counties does not offend my sensibilities. Having 300 governments between school districts and villages and towns, and that does offend my sensibility of what is efficient.
Right. Too much. It's too much. Well, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much
Okay.
for giving us information, and we are definitely impressed with your entrepreneurship and synchropath, and we want to wish you again lots of luck on that, and I'm sure it'll be successful. I mean, I have a trust in you, and I
Thank you.
trust you a lot. So
Thank you.
you're a very good person, not only good entrepreneur but good person. As a person also, you're a good man.
Thanks.
Yep.
That means a
Yeah.
lot.
Thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, you can email me at rajamitv@gmail.com. Again, that's rajamitv@gmail.com. If you want to watch our prior shows, you can go on youtube.com/Infosys International. Again, that's youtube.com/Infosys International. Again, see you next time. Thank you. Bye.